Eowyn believed she had made a great sacrifice by marrying a powerful widower. But when the past returned, she discovered that she had never truly been free. That harsh winter, the streets were far too quiet. Snow covered the carriages, the windows, and the gardens of the grand houses, but it couldn't hide the secrets that lived inside them. Among all the families in town, none faced days as dark as the Langston family. After their father's death, the two sisters were left almost entirely alone in the world. The older one was named Eowyn, the younger, Lysandra. Eowyn was only 29, but her eyes already bore the weight of someone who had carried many responsibilities from a very young age. The house they lived in was beautiful, but empty. The hallways echoed with memories of old balls, forgotten laughter, and promises that were never kept. And now, many debts. Their father was a kind man, but reckless, and had gambled away much of the family's fortune on failed business ventures and games of chance. When he died, he left behind several debts. For months, Eowyn tried to hide the truth from her younger sister. She discreetly sold household items, let the servants go, cut expenses, but there was a limit to everything. Her sister had a suitor, Lord Felipe, but how could she be given in marriage without even having a dowry? On a cold winter afternoon, a letter arrived. Who was the sender? Lord Cedric Thorne, a powerful widower, a man whose reputation inspired both respect and fear. Nearly 20 years older than Eowyn, owner of vast estates and a past that no one talked much about. The letter contained only a few lines, but they would change Eowyn's fate forever. He knew all about her family's debts and offered a solution: marriage. In exchange, all the family's debts would be paid off immediately. The house would remain with them. Lysandra would have a respectable dowry to get married. Eowyn read the letter 3 times. Her heart was pounding so hard it seemed to echo through the hall. "Mail you got, Dad?" A man she barely knew, who was old enough to be practically her father. A man about whom strange stories were whispered. But the alternative was worse. If the debts weren't paid, the house would be taken, and her younger sister would be left with nothing, no protection and no future. And so Eowyn made a decision, a solitary and purely rational decision. She would accept. The first time she spoke with Lord Cedric, Eowyn felt something strange. It wasn't exactly fear, but a feeling that he saw more than he should. The meeting took place in the sitting room of Eowyn's house. Cedric Thorne was tall, elegant, with slightly graying hair and deep, observant eyes, as if he were analyzing every hidden thought. "Miss Eowyn, I'm pleased that you accepted my proposal." His voice was gentle, but there was something about it, something hard to define. Eowyn kept her composure and said, "The proposal was unexpected." He smiled discreetly and replied, "Many of life's important decisions are." She took a sip of her tea and said to him, "Certainly." He then looked her in the eyes and said, "Your debts will be paid tomorrow." Was she surprised, even before the wedding? He then gave a slight smile and said, "I keep my word." He leaned his head slightly closer to her and continued, "And if your sister wishes, her wedding can take place before ours. That way, you can leave your sister with her husband and we'll head to our new home." He said it so naturally that for a moment, Eowyn was silent. Making sure Lysandra was safe was all she had wanted since their father had died. And for a few seconds, the weight she carried in her chest seemed to lighten. She felt a bit emotional. "Would that be possible?" she asked cautiously. Lord Cedric replied with the same calm as before. "Lord Felipe has already shown interest in your sister, correct?" Eowyn nodded. "Yes, they planned to marry, but without a proper dowry, his family would never allow it." Cedric just raised one of his eyebrows slightly and concluded, "Then there won't be any problem at all. Your sister's dowry will be provided, generous enough that no family would oppose the union." Eowyn felt her eyes sting with tears, quietly. For months, she had been doing the math, secretly selling furniture, spending sleepless nights thinking about how to protect Lysandra. And now, a solution appeared before her. Maybe a risky one, but still, it was a solution. In that case, she finally said, I am very grateful. You seem relieved, he said. Elwyn took a deep breath. My sister deserves a peaceful future. If this agreement guarantees that, then it's all worth it. Cedric tilted his head slightly and replied, That's very admirable. He then stood up. Your sister's wedding will be arranged first. As soon as she is properly settled in her new home, we will leave for my estate. And he headed toward the door. She felt a mix of relief for her sister and fear of what this union with him might bring. But the relief was stronger, so she simply said, It will be a pleasure. Lysander's wedding took place 3 weeks later. The small-town chapel was lit by candles that cold morning. Despite the harsh winter outside, inside the hall there was a gentle warmth, full of anticipation and joy. Lysandra walked down the aisle in a simple yet very elegant dress. The smile on her face was so genuine, it made Elwyn's heart ache. It had been a long time since she had seen her sister so happy. When the priest began the ceremony, Elwyn remained seated, silent, in the front pew. She observed every detail, and for the first time in many months, felt something close to peace. When the ceremony ended, amid applause, hugs, and a few happy tears, Lysandra ran to Elwyn and hugged her tightly. I will never forget what you did for me, Lysandra whispered. Elwyn just smiled and stroked her sister's hair. I just want you to be happy. And the following week, it was Elwyn's wedding. It was simple, without any big celebrations, just a few guests. Lysandra cried throughout the entire ceremony, but at the end, Elwyn just held her hand and smiled, as if she were happy, as if she weren't handing her own fate over to a stranger. Before leaving, Elwyn looked deep into her sister's eyes and said, Now we're safe. Be at peace, and I will be too. I love you forever, my sister. I'll come visit you soon. That same night, they left for the Thorn estate. The trip to Lord Cedric's estate took 2 days. The carriage moved slowly along the snow-covered roads, while the silence between them seemed to fill the entire space inside. Elwyn kept her hands folded in her lap, gazing out the window. Cedric, sitting across from her, read through some papers by the dim light of a lantern. He was polite, even kind, but also distant. On the first night of the trip, when they arrived at the elegant inn along the road, Cedric called the innkeeper and calmly said, 2 rooms. Elwyn looked up, surprised. The man simply nodded and asked for the rooms to be prepared. She didn't say anything. The next day, the same thing. At the second inn, separate rooms. Cedric had only shown himself to be very proper. He made sure she had hot meals. He made sure the carriage stopped for a break. He had a new winter coat bought for her when he noticed the cold was getting too harsh. But there was something strange. He always kept his distance. Always. He never tried to touch her hand, never tried to get closer. Elwyn didn't know whether she should feel relieved or worried. And finally, they arrived at the mansion. A huge country palace. The mansion looked like something out of a dream. Wide hallways, beautiful paintings, magnificent ballrooms, and lots of servants. Some servants were waiting on the main staircase. As soon as she got out of the carriage, Elwyn heard one of them announce, "Welcome, Lady Thorn." She thanked him and smiled. Snow was still falling slowly over the dark gardens, lit only by a few lanterns. Already inside the mansion, Elwyn watched through the window as the servants unloaded the last suitcases. Her heart was racing, with the strange feeling that her life had changed forever in that moment. She was now Lady Thorn, and now that enormous mansion would be her new home. On their first night in the mansion, they dined alone. That table seemed far too big for just 2 people. Cedric, who spoke little, asked about Lysandra. He asked if Elwyn was comfortable, if she needed anything, but he never talked much about himself. When dinner was over, he stood up and said calmly, "I had a room prepared for you in the East Wing. I hope it will be to your liking." She hesitated before asking, "And what about you?" "My quarters are in the North Wing." Elwyn blinked slowly. The whole situation was becoming more and more incomprehensible. They were husband and wife, but there would be no wedding night and they would still sleep in separate rooms? Months went by. Cedric continued to treat her with absolute respect. Sometimes they talked in the library, sometimes they walked through the gardens. His company became more and more pleasant, but they didn't live as husband and wife, just as two good friends. Elowen often wondered, why did he marry me? Winter returned, and with it, their first wedding anniversary. That night, Elowen would also turn 30. Lord Thorne had arranged for a special dinner for them. He was in the house library when the servant came in, visibly nervous, and said, "Lord Thorne, there's a visitor in the parlor." "At this hour?" "Yes, he insists on speaking with you, sir. He said the matter concerns Lady Thorne." The visitor was received in the main hall. He was a tall man with a cold stare and an arrogant smile. His name was Magnus Ryle. He showed no respect whatsoever upon seeing Elowen. In fact, he even seemed pleased. Cedric came in right after. His face was completely serious. "Mr. Ryle," he said coldly, "you weren't invited." The man let out a small laugh. "I didn't need an invitation." He then pulled a folded document from his coat pocket. "I came to claim something that belongs to me," he said, raising the paper. Cedric remained still and simply said, "No, it doesn't belong to you." The man insisted, "Oh, yes, it does." He slowly unfolded the paper and showed a contract signed by Edward Langston. He was Halloween's father. Halloween felt her blood run cold. Magnus spoke with a cruel calmness. "When she turned 30, she would be my wife." "It's the payment for the debt." Halloween could barely breathe. "This is absurd," she said. The man smiled, looked at her, and said, "Not according to the law." Then Cedric spoke. His voice was colder than Halone had ever heard. "Mr. Hale, the contract is no longer valid." "No longer valid?" he said, raising an eyebrow. "Explain to me how that happened." Cedric replied calmly, "She got married before the date." Haley gave a smile and simply said, "But now she'll be free because her husband is dead." He then pulled out a knife and stabbed it into Lord Thorne's chest. Halloween fell into complete despair. "No, call the doctor." Haley grabbed her by the arm. "And you're coming with me." And he dragged Halloween out. But one of the servants, hearing the fight from afar, ran to get the hunting rifle and shot Haley, who fell dead on the floor. Halloween was horrified and desperate. Lord Thorne was lying on the ground, bleeding heavily and unconscious. A doctor was called in a hurry and managed to arrive that same night. The entire mansion was in an uproar. Servants ran through the hallways, candles were lit in a rush, and a suffocating tension filled the air. Lord Cedric was then taken to the large bedroom in the north wing. His shirt had been cut open and blood stained the light-colored sheets. Halloween remained seated by the side of the bed. Her hands were trembling. The doctor examined the wound carefully while one of the servants held the lamp closer. "The knife didn't hit the heart," the doctor finally said, "but the blade went in deep. He lost a lot of blood." Halloween felt the air return to her lungs. "But will he survive, doctor?" The doctor sighed and said, "Now, it depends on his strength and on God." Cedric was stitched up and bandaged. After that, he fell into a deep, almost unresponsive sleep. Days began to pass, but he didn't wake up. Halloween hardly left the reign. The servants insisted that she rest, but she refused. She sat by his bedside, holding his hand in silence, and didn't leave. Sometimes she spoke softly, as if he could hear her. "Please, wake up. You need to wake up." She looked at his face and remembered everything. She looked at his face, ran her hand over it, and remembered everything. The letter, the wedding, the way he always treated her with absolute respect. Even though she was his wife, he never forced her to do anything. He never demanded anything. And now he had almost died trying to protect her. Halloween bowed her head and murmured a prayer. "God, please," her voice faltered. "Please, save his life. I love him." A tear then rolled down her face. That night, she fell asleep, sitting in the armchair next to the bed, still holding his hand. On the 5th day, something changed. Halloween was quietly reading a book to pass the time when she felt a slight movement. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but then his fingers moved. She set the book aside and quickly looked up. Mr. Thorne? No response. But a few seconds later, his eyes slowly opened. Confused. Halloween brought her hand to her mouth, overcome with emotion. Thank God. Cedric tried to speak, but his voice came out weak. What happened? She immediately moved closer. You were attacked. He frowned slightly. Haley, he's dead, she said. Cedric closed his eyes for a moment, as if processing the information. When he opened his eyes again, he looked straight at Halloween. Are you okay? The question made her swallow hard. Even wounded, his first concern was still her. Then she said something she had been holding back for days. You could have died. Cedric tried to smile, though he was weak. Yeah, looks like it wasn't my time yet. Halloween shook her head. You did all this to protect me. He didn't answer right away, just looked at her face, but then said, it was my responsibility. She held his hand more tightly. No, it wasn't. It wasn't your responsibility. Cedric fell silent, and for the first time since they'd met, something different crossed his eyes. A few days later, Cedric was already able to sit up in bed. He was still weak, but he was recovering well. That afternoon, Halloween was helping change his bandages when he said, You don't have to keep taking care of me yourself. The servants can do that. She looked up and said, I know. Then why are you still here? He replied. She was silent for a moment, and then she told him sincerely, I'm doing this because I want to, because I like you. Cedric watched her face for a few seconds, as if he were trying to figure something out. Then he said cautiously, Helene, you don't owe me anything. She smiled softly. I know that. She finished adjusting the bandage, held his hand, and said, Over this past year, I've seen how you've taken care of me and treated me with respect, and you have no idea how happy that makes me. But after everything that's happened, I realize that my feelings for you have grown, or rather, they've changed. So I'd like us to really start our marriage, if you want that too. He gently took her hand, kissed her wedding ring, and said, I would really like that. She then gave a big smile and said, Then we need to pick up where we left off with that special dinner we were going to celebrate. Outside the house, the cold was biting as the snow kept falling over the gardens of Thorne Mansion. But inside Thorne House, there were two hearts warmed by love, because a new story was just beginning.